Again, I appreciate everyone coming today. Thank you. For those who don't know me, my name is William Fletcher, ABC President. It's great to see everyone. I thank you for joining us at our first joint luncheon with AGC, ASA, and ABC. We all understand the importance of the workforce shortage in our industry. Our hopes are that today you are made more aware of your options and have a chance to participate in the open discussion. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce everyone to the staffs at each of our associations. Please stand when your name is called out. Here today with AGC, we have Kelly Robbins. There he is. We have Beth Franks, Debbie Hall. Representing ASA, we have Executive Director Ashley Nichols. And with ABC, we have Bill Rochelle and Jonathan Adams.
He is not here.
Not here, okay. All right, because we want to have ample time for discussion, we're going to kick this off with a blessing from D.B. Hill, and then today's moderator, Courtney Little, will introduce our panel. So please feel free to begin eating after our prayer. D.B.
Before we pray, I think what we're going to hear today probably is a good thing. You're going to give us reasons that we should try to help these folks coming back into society. And I think that's admirable. I might suggest that there's one more reason that we should do this. In Matthew's 25th chapter, there were some folks talking to Jesus about entering into the kingdom of heaven. And he answered them, "For I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you took care of me. I was in prison and you visited me." I think these reasons are a big part of what we need to listen to today and possibly try to embrace what these folks bring us. Let us pray. O God, from whom all good proceeds, grant that by your inspiration we may think those things that are right, and by your merciful guidance we may accomplish them. Be with us now as we do the work we have gathered here to do. We commend to your gracious care and keeping all the men and women of our armed services at home and abroad. Accept our prayers on behalf of your servants who are less fortunate than we are. Comfort and hold near to you their families and console them as they return their lives to a peaceful place. In your goodness, keep us from all things that may hurt us, that we, being ready in mind and body, may accomplish with free hearts those things which belong to your purpose. Bless the meal we are soon to take to our use and us to your continued service. These things we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
All right, so we're going to go and get the program started, and like I said, with the compressed time today, y'all feel free to eat, but I think what you're going to hear is very good and important news for our industry. First and foremost, my name is Courtney Little. I'm with Ace Glass. I'm a past president of ASA Central Arkansas and current national treasurer for ASA, and also a AGC member on the legislative committee and ABC on the legislative committee. So I enjoyed what each and one of these organizations here, and glad to partner up with all three of them to show that we're on the same page, that this is an issue that we're all dealing with. It's also my pleasure to welcome our esteemed panel here. We have Nisha Garamala from Good Grid, Paul Stevens, Exodus Ministry, Scott McLean from Pathway to Freedom, and Leon Jones, Department of Labor. So we're going to have some got some various opinions, but I think we're all on the same page, but different statistics of things that we're seeing. And as we get started here, as we do the first questions, if y'all just want to share a short, let's go into a short introduction of what you do so that our audience understands what angle we're coming from on these and why the information is relevant and well known. Is it on?
Hi, my name is Nisha Garimala, and I work on the Good Grid project. The Good Grid is a partnership program between Protect Solutions, which is a software development firm in downtown Little Rock, and the Arkansas Department of Community Corrections. So basically, Good Grid is an online resource directory and job portal for returning citizens. We have about 55,000 people on active parole and probation in Arkansas, and every one of them has a profile on Good Grid, and the qualified ones put up their resumes, their letter of explanations, and we try to match them to employers for free.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Stevens. I'm the Executive Director of the Exodus Project. You have to kind of watch the insider terminology here, but it is a pre-release educational program. So in other words, it's education while they're still in prison that is designed to address issues surrounding re-entry. We're faith-based, and so there's a heavy recovery component to what we do, but we also, we call it the entrepreneurship program, because what we tell them is if you weren't an entrepreneur, you will be now. And so you're going to have to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get moving. I retired as a pastor from Fellowship Bible Church for 20 years and took over this ministry as an opportunity. It's something that me and another guy in the back of the room have dabbled with for 20-something years.
I'm Scott McLean. I'm the founder, executive director of the Pathway to Freedom program, which was formerly known as IFI, Interchange Freedom Initiative, which was a program of prison fellowship. We came here in this state in 2006 when Governor Huckabee was here, and we're a Christ-centered holistic service program, pre-release and post-release, and trying to help the state reduce the state's recidivism rate. We don't receive any funding from the state, all private dollars, so that we can do what we do and what we've been commissioned to do. We know that if the state puts money in, that we can't continue the direction we'd like to go. As a result of that, this is our of course, final days because we're closing the program down due to lack of funding. And so one of the things that we do know, we still have men that are releasing from prison into the communities that we're helping in the reentry side and with employment, trying to assist with employment, along with mentors, local churches involved, and any other criminogenic needs that they may have. And so that's the service that we provide with the state. We've been doing this now for 10 years. We brought the IFI program under a new name, which is called Pathway to Freedom. And so excited about being here and continuing to work within the state structures as long as we can.
Good afternoon. My name is Leon Jones Jr., Director at the Arkansas Department of Labor. And, I'm appreciative of being here because I believe that as my work continues at the Labor Department, I get an opportunity to go around and speaking to different organizations, meeting people in different industries, and kind of learning what the needs are from an industry perspective. And I think that my involvement, especially today's conversation, really has to do with and center around what employers are looking for and what employers need in skilled labor. So I look forward to kind of answering any questions and being a part of this panel. Thank you.
And of course, I'm here as an employer of people that have come out of these programs and have had some success with this and some experience. And so because of that, I wanted to share, obviously, with the industry. I'm in for everybody's success. So hopefully something that works for us, for Ace Glass, can grow and help other people succeed. We all need people, including us, but it's a resource that possibly all of us can, once we hear more about it, can dig into. So without further ado, let's move into the discussion points a little bit. We sent those out by email and invitations, but we're going to kind of run through those and try to reserve a few minutes afterwards for Q&A. But hopefully this is just a starting point of the discussion because everybody on this panel, including myself, are available afterward, and other times we're going to have contact information towards the end. So you can feel free to reach out if we don't answer all your questions or you have further interest at the end of today, because like I said, the people are out there and the resources are available. So first, let's contextualize the problem. Kind of talk about what percentage of our population has a criminal background in general, and we've heard one number, but some other numbers out there, and then how does that affect all of our lives, our communities, and possibly our industry. Nisha, you want to start with that, and we'll just kind of walk down the table from there?
So right now in Arkansas, like I was saying earlier, there are about 55,000 people that are on parole and probation. That's active parole or probation, so that's only people that have actively been on paper for the last 3 years. So there are a lot of other people. In Arkansas, in the United States, we don't have a specific number for Arkansas, but in the United States, 1 out of every 4 people has a criminal background, which is a huge, huge number. So 55,000 are on active parole or probation, 18,000 are actually actively still incarcerated. So that's a pretty large number, and I think the reason why we're here today is because we really want to let the general public know about how this affects our communities. You know, a lot of times we have our own things going on. We're pretty insulated from the problem. You know, we don't really see how it affects our communities. I would say out of everybody in prison, 90% of them are coming out. You know, it's not like they're going to stay in there forever. They are coming out. They're coming out to our communities. So, you know, we really want to begin this conversation because while they're coming out to our communities, I don't mean to sound menacing, but, you know, we either give them a chance and let them try to succeed, or, you know, we kind of can expect that they'll go back to what they know.
Yeah, and right now they're going back at a clip of about 54%. So it kind of takes some numbers here again. So 60,000 people under supervision. There are 18,000 round figures that are actually incarcerated. And there are 2,000 waiting in county jails to be incarcerated. So we're talking about around 80,000 people today. And of course that number is fluid, right? People come, people go. If you stop and think, you look at the numbers, statistically, average sentence is 4 years. That amounts to $100,000 a head. You don't have to be a math genius to, you know, multiply 80,000 by 100,000 and get a bigger number than you want to be paying taxes for. The other thing, if you think about each of those individuals has a family, probably has kids, mom and a dad. Certainly there's going to be some level of nuclear family. So if you multiply that 80,000 by 4, that means there's 320,000 people in the state of Arkansas whose lives are being impacted by incarceration. It's a big number. That's a whole bunch of us. And so, you know, you back up and go, okay, so we're putting them in prison at a in fact, Arkansas's got one of the fastest growing prison populations in the country. And then they're going in for 3 or 4 years, and then better than 50% of them are going back within 3 years. It's a problem. You know, it's we're so used to it in the news, but as a friend of mine has said, it is a crisis. And the important thing that I think that we want to share with you today is some of the people that are in prison are there because we're afraid of them, and I'm really glad they're there, and they need to stay. But there's a large portion who are there because we're just mad at them. We're just mad at them. And it may be, and what we believe is with some work, some of those folks can make a different decision and turn their life around. We believe people can change. And given the right resources to do that. And we'll talk more about that as we go.
I know you're hearing a lot of numbers, and probably will throughout this time that we're together. One of the things that I do want to bring to your attention is the fact that we're spending what our spending's like. What it costs for an inmate, one, to go into the Department of Corrections, come to prison, The cost for that is $23,000 a year. That's $63 a day. Now, when you look at those numbers, compare it to other programs that are doing something. I know with our program, what it costs a year for one guy to go through it is $2,400. Now, what do we want to do? We're wanting to save tax dollars to keep ourselves from continuously spending money and more money. And what they're talking about, what has been the talk, is building more prisons. We know that's not the answer. Don't have the money to keep up with that. And so it's people like you that we try to partner with in order to make a difference in our community. And if we can't step up to that, then we're going to continue to have that revolving door. And our neighbors, your neighbors, are going to live in fear as a result of that. But we need people that will partner, that would help break the cycle of the revolving door. And by doing that, we're asking for people to step up to the plate. Employers in general, all of you guys are here, to give guys an opportunity. Now, does every prisoner fall in that category where you want to give them the opportunity? No, I wouldn't say so. But it'd be great to connect with people like this who do have programs that are actually working to benefit the state. And we know the government can't do it alone. That's why we're in this state, because the government saw that there's value in what you're doing. And we need people that can do the same thing.
One of the things that's interesting to me is I opened up the paper yesterday, and I'm sure many of you saw the article in the paper about Arkansas's unemployment and how we're one of the lowest we have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the nation. I think we're listed as number 10. And it's interesting that I drive up and down the highways and the streets of Little Rock particularly, and I see signs and windows of jobs available. But then when you look at the citizens who are returning, they don't seem to have those same opportunities. And so you kind of wonder, what is it that is lacking between the job that's posted and the person who needs a job? Where is that disconnect? Where is that gap? And I think one of the things that I've learned over the last 20 months in this position is that that gap a lot of time comes in what we call soft skills. You know, do these guys who are re-entering, or these ladies who are re-entering, do they understand what it means to get to work on time? Do they understand what it means to just, you know, have a clean shirt, or, you know, wash face, or look a person in the eye? And so those are the things that I'm kind of learning and trying to understand and trying to figure out how we bridge the gap. Pulaski Tech has a great program that they're doing over there, and they have some things that they got going on, and I know some others on this panel have some things going on. But it's kind of interesting that we have a very low unemployment rate, but yet we're still having a struggle with finding jobs for returning citizens. So I'd be interested even more so to hear how it's happening in these organizations, but also from a Department of Labor perspective, how do I help in that, and trying to really guide that as well.
Thank you. Hey Scott, starting with you, let's move on to the next question. What kind of charges and convictions are we dealing with? I mean, what does this population look like as they're coming back out, just to kind of, I guess, set the foundation for who these potential applicants are?
I would say our society thinks in a lot of ways that most people going to prison are violent offenders, and they're not. There's a small proportion of those that are. When you look at the prison setting itself, you see a lot of drug offenses, which are very high. Prison right now, there's no respect to person. I mean, it doesn't discriminate. And so you've got white collar, blue collar, you name it. And so there's no longer a myth. Now, property crimes, very low. When you look at that versus violent versus nonviolent, we have 48% that are nonviolent. You got 54 that are violent. So look at those numbers there. So when you talk about the prison setting, it's not always violent. And so the majority of them are low level. And you look at 78, 70 some, 72% of those, that would be. Now those numbers range, and I know there was a top 10 list that I got from the ADC and where we fall within the state. And when you look at those things, drugs are high on the list. That's the top one. And so then that number begins to go down to the bottom, where you have property, theft, all of those things. So I think the fear that we have is that our reputation as a company, as an employer, we don't want that to be tarnished. And when you look at that, I don't blame you. We don't want that to be tarnished or tarnished for you. But what we want to do as we partner with corrections, we want to lessen those fears. Therefore, we put some measures in place so that that would help you by having support systems, strong support systems that will help ease your mind in some degree. And we're going to talk more in detail about that, but I'll pass it on to my other colleagues here and go from that.
Paul, you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's just what we've seen in the Arkansas Community Corrections. There's probably a definition that needs to be done. The Arkansas Department of Corrections is the larger of the two departments, and that's where the typical incarceration takes place. Arkansas Community Corrections are only drug and alcohol related offenses. Does that make sense? Now, it's not all the drug and alcohol related offenses. It's just some of them. What we see is these are our kids. They're our kids. Our kids that got messed up on drugs and got to drinking too much in college and or in high school, or grew up in neighborhoods where it was generational poverty. I mean, that's the issue is these are really our children. That doesn't make them useful employees, but if we begin to see them from that perspective, then all of a sudden, you know what, interviewing people is hard anyway. In 20 years of fellowship, I hired and dismissed a lot of pastors. Interviewing people is the hardest thing in the world to do, isn't it? Because it's easy to interview for skills, it's hard to interview for character. But if you learn to do that, then you're not really, for at least 40% of this population, you're not running any different a risk than you run with anybody else that you're going to hire. Just a thought.
I want to go back to something Scott said. He was talking about violent versus nonviolent offenders. And I think that is an important distinction to make, but I really want to emphasize for you guys as employers to always, always ask for the circumstances. Because, you know, a lot of times, I can, just to rehumanize the situation, I just met a girl 2 weeks ago. Her name is Brandy, and she's a 29-year-old mom of 3, okay? And she is a violent offender. Her charge is terroristic threat of attack. So when I say terroristic threat of attack, you guys might think, oh, okay, she was going to blow up a building, or she was going to terrorize some people. But actually, the circumstances, she was having a fight with her boyfriend of 5 years. They lived together, they had a fight. There was absolutely no physical assault, no weapons used. It was completely verbal. But again, you know, she's classified as a violent offender with terroristic threat of attack. So one of the things we do at Good Grid is we always encourage our candidates to write something called a letter of explanation. And what that does is it helps say, yes, this was my conviction, this was my charge, this is what happened, but here are the circumstances. And more importantly, what have I done since that conviction to improve? And I'd really like to encourage the employers here to focus on what they've done to improve. Because a lot of us have made mistakes, but the thing to keep in mind is, you know, well, have they gone in and done their career readiness certification? Have they finished anger management? Have they been sober for, you know, a good period of time? Anything else?
Yeah, I would add to that same experience. I was very fortunate. Dad, years ago, before we had programs like this, or had just beginning these programs, would dig in a little bit on some of these applications and stuff, and you would have something on there and go, whoa, what is that? And you tell the stories. I got in a fight, or something happened, or I was a young man and I did something stupid. It was 15 years ago, and you know, good demeanor. Some of those guys have been with us 10 years or more, and it turned out to be great men that just needed a chance to get out of it. And if you heard their story, you just saw it in black and white. It's kind of like your golf scorecard. There's no explanation. A bad score is a bad score. That's their story, and now they're, you know, people that anybody runs into them says that's one of the best people I know. And you know, I'd ever say, well, if you only knew, because that's their story to tell, not mine. But so I said that's been our experience too. So we kind of talked a little bit about this, but we'll kind of go back down the panel. But what kind of typical reservations do y'all hear from employers? And I guess we'll start with you, Nisha, since you've got since the Good Grid kind of goes through this and is trying to adopt, you know, take care of some of those. But I mean, what's a typical reservation from an employer saying, I need people, but I'm concerned about getting into this pool of applicants. How do I bridge that gap?
Okay. I think the typical reservation, I think we can all agree it's a trust issue, right? Most of these people, we know that they've made mistakes because it's on their background. And so we all need to try to overcome that trust issue, which is why I think the most important thing is to, again, focus on circumstances, look at the letter of explanation, and also realize that there are entities out there that try to help you overcome that trust issue. For instance, federal bonding. How many of you guys have heard of federal bonding? Okay, so federal bonding is really, really important for this kind of population. It's actually a program where, let's say that an ex-offender comes to me and they're looking to be hired. And I think, yeah, I like them a lot, but they're an ex-offender and I just don't know if I can get over it. Well, federal bonding is a program that for their first 6 months while they're hired with you, the government will actually bond them for up to $25,000. So that means if they commit a crime of dishonesty while at the workplace, let's say they vandalize something or they steal some equipment, that can actually be covered. So that's one thing. There's another incentive called work opportunity tax credit. And that work opportunity tax credit is about $2,400 per person that you hire. And that's also meant to kind of incentivize employers to take a chance on these ex-offenders.
Yeah, I just adding to what's already been stated, that, you know, can you trust this person? Are you going to have to turn around and refill the position in a month? You know, the amount of money that you may have to invest in training them and getting them going and the distractions. It's just hiring people is a hassle. It's just a hassle. I do think, though, you'll have an opportunity in an interview to ask much deeper questions than you could in most interviews. I mean, if a guy's or a woman is coming to you and saying, yeah, I was in jail for terroristic threatening, then, you know, I'd be going, well, how you doing with your temper there? You know, tell me what you've done to address that. And so all of a sudden you can move kind of below the line, if you know what I mean by that, into a more personal, more intimate, more detailed conversation and have a much better idea of what you're dealing with. Because, you know, if I have an anger issue, it's not hard to dig that out. And as he mentioned, it's all about the soft skills. Can they control their temper? Are they submissive to authority? Are they willing to work as a team? Those are the kinds of things that are at the core of building a good employee. And I think you'll have a better chance to ask those questions.
Quick correction, I think I got tongue twisted. 48% which is violent and 52% which is nonviolent, if I didn't say that the first time. I got confused. But to speak to your question here, one of the things that I think is big and huge that employers that we've worked with over the past have taken a deep breath over and could sleep at night is the fact that there's a support system in place. And Nisha mentioned some of those things that are barriers to help you guys ease your mind with bonding. One of those things, those support network systems. Mentoring is a huge issue. And I think what the programs now are realizing that in order to help these guys be successful, a lot of them don't have a great support system at all. And this is probably something employers don't realize, that some of these ex-offenders or felons may have come from a program that could provide you more information, but you don't know. But that's one of the things, by connecting with Exodus or connecting with Anisha and all these other programs or Pathway to Freedom, then you realize that you've got a support network that they work from. We realize too that mentoring itself helps reduce the risk of reincarceration by 30%. And when we look at those numbers there, is there someone in place? A lot of these guys getting out of prison, they don't have anybody. But when you connect with programs such as these, it helps to further cut the recidivism rate and give them opportunities to succeed on the outside. That's what this is all about. For employers, I know when we've sent a reference letter saying we're Pathway to Freedom in behalf of a particular offender, we've sent that, and they were amazed at some of the things that they were involved in, or they were currently involved in, even while they are out of prison. And so that would be an option for you to look at. And I don't know who does the interviews and all that stuff for you as a company, but those are things that you could particularly ask. You have a support system on the outside. Who's that support system? And so those would be some great questions. I know with the Department of Corrections, Department of Community Corrections, they're all trying to follow that same path of trying to find pieces to the puzzle to help further reduce recidivism by creating mentoring programs or utilizing those soft skill programs that we talked about, those skills that they can have in order to help make them become a good employer. You're a good employer.
Thank you.
You know, one of the things from the state perspective that was done even prior to the Hutchinson administration was that they've removed the box. And I know some of you have heard that terminology, but basically on applications back when I started applying for jobs, it would ask, are you a felon? Or have you been convicted of a felony? But that on state applications has been removed. And so that's one way to remove the barrier, at least from the initial application phase. And so then the individual has an opportunity to maybe get an interview, and then at that point they can reveal and have the opportunity, excuse me, to kind of explain the circumstances and show what they've been doing. And so I think that that's one of the ways that employers going forward can really start to understand who's applying for these jobs without that first initial thought in the back of your head, wow, this person has a felony. So you're not even thinking about that initially, and you're talking to a person across the table from you. We had a situation in my agency a few months ago, about 8 months ago, where an individual applied for a position. They had been convicted of a felony. Of course, we didn't know it, but the job that they were applying for was similar to the felony that they received. And so, you know, once we found that out, of course, they weren't a match. And so that's something else that employers have to keep in mind as well, is that they may just not be a match for that particular position, but it doesn't mean that they're not a match for the company. And so we have to, because we don't want to put somebody who has committed embezzlement over the finances of the company. I think you're just asking for trouble. But, you know, that person may be a good dock manager, you know, who can manage people. We just never know. And so we just got to kind of think outside the box and think about other ways in which to employ people in positions that's going to be a good fit, that's going to help them to succeed.
That's good. I agree with all that. I don't have anything to add. Thank you. Moving on to the... Oh,
Are you making a presentation?
sir?
Can we ask questions?
I was going to, if you don't mind holding to the end, but we can start now if you want. I mean, I think we've gotten through most of the points. We're just about to that point, so we'll get there. Just a second here. Just some key statistics on how this applicant pool performs against basically your normal applicant pool. I know we've talked about some of the numbers out there, that there's some success here.
Well, that's kind of a problem, isn't it? We just completed a pilot program, 18 months. We graduated 128 men and women from the ADC, and we're 18 months out, and so the first year is where the highest attrition for recidivism is. And so it's still a little early. A number of our graduates are just completing their first year, but at this point our recidivism rate is under 5%. Now, it won't stay there. I wish it would. But that's a good indication that they're stable. And the information that we get from organizations that we refer our graduates to, I hope on Tuesday Goodwill is going to write a letter saying Exodus grads are the greatest, because they think that. And so we have a network now of graduates across the state. We're in touch with them. They're in touch with us. And then the other benefit, if you were interested in some of our graduates, we know them. Our class time is 240 hours, 8 to noon, 5 days a week. And so we and the volunteer instructors are all directly involved with them. And so, you know, within the limits of what's reasonable, all you got to do is ask. and we'll tell them or you if we think that's the last thing you need to be doing. On the other side of that, I can think of 3 or 4 men right now who have are skilled in various trades, and they're working at Waffle House. It's just such a waste. Now I'm not saying all of them do, because all of them don't, but there's a lot of potential there if you're willing to take the time to kind of sift through.
Do you want to add to those statistics? And then we'll move on to, I think that's good, though, we'll have a second to the additional training and skills, but so get some other statistics
Yeah.
to move into that, that'd be great.
I will, of course, recidivism, we think about recidivism, how the ADC looks at its recidivism and rate it is based on 3 years of offenders being out and returning back to prison. And they claim a recidivism rate currently is 48%. We know those numbers could be higher than what they are, up to 52, 54%. And with Pathway to Freedom, we know that we haven't done an official study on Pathway to Freedom. We're working with the ADC on that. We know based on the research and the data that we have, it is a lot less than half of what the ADC does. And so we do know that. We've been working on that, and even the model that we had with IFI, very comparable. Well, they did the study some years ago, which was 10, 12% after 5 years being in. And so we know it works. There's literature out there that talks about these types of programs that actually work because of the support system, the network that goes on within that, and addressing the criminogenic risk factors that are there at the same time.
Okay. Okay. While you're there, Scott, why don't you tell a little bit about the additional technical and life skills training? Because I know I've had several employers ask me, is there something additional? Are these people trained? Do they have a background, or are we training them something in these programs that gives them a leg up as they start off with us?
Sure we do. That's very important. When I talked about those criminogenic risk factors, we have to address all 8 of them. And if we don't know, some of those things would be low levels of vocational or education or egocentric, more about me and anybody else. But one of the things that we address is we have an entrepreneurship program. And of course, we had the privilege of Courtney coming in being one of the judges. If you've ever seen Shark Tank, we had a group of employers, business owners that came in and judged these men do their business plans. They call it an expo, where they, if you can't find work, create your own. And we know it's difficult for employers felons to be employed by employers based on their background. And so they took off and did these business plan and did an outstanding job. The actual course is called the Ice House. And Paul, Exodus, goes through that as well. So we both have those where they're learning different skills. They also have some low-tech skills, career development, trying to get them ready for interviews and work. A lot of our guys are able to go to work release, learn on-the-job skills, or state police where they actually work, whether it's government grounds or wherever it may be. So we think that is critical to their survival on the outside in order to have some means of income coming in.
Talking about those skills, Pulaski Tech has a program, and they've been working with the Salt Falcon and other companies so the companies will identify individuals that they really want to hire and bring into their company, but they realize that they're lacking in some of the core soft skills that the company is looking for. And so the company knows that they can train them to do the job, to fix a widget or to build something, but that other stuff is difficult. So what Pulaski Tech has done is they've created a program, and any employer in the state or in Central Arkansas has access to this program just by reaching out to Pulaski Tech. And what they'll do is they'll take them through a 6 to 10 week program where they'll teach them different skills, soft skills, and how to, what it means to get to work on time, what it means to, dress for success and look someone in the eye and those types of things. And so those are resources that employers have in Central Arkansas that they can go to and help them. So if you identify someone who you may want to bring on, but you realize that they're lacking in some areas, you can work with these different, with this, at least with Pulaski Tech, and then move them through their program. And so I think not only that program, but there are others that are out there that if we really take advantage of those, then we can really further reduce the recidivism rate and put good people to work.
Paul? Either one.
Oh. Okay. This is getting ridiculous on the mic here. I don't know what to tell
You're
you.
stuck in the middle there.
Yeah, that's what
You
I
got a
guess.
tough- You got a tough spot.
Yeah. First of all, what we do is the equivalent of cognitive behavior theory. We're trying to teach them to think, to learn to plan, to have a vision, to create a plan, to execute on the plan, to live life on purpose, as we say, rather than being reactive. And so what our educational goal is to attack what we feel like are the core issues that are the difference between making significant changes in your life or not. Now, we can't teach them everything, but you know, we have a pretty good spread of classes. But as he was saying, there are a number of programs available that the state offers in one way or another. The WAGE program does something very similar to what you're talking about with Pulaski Tech. And for example, I've had 2 felons that work for me, and one of the gals who really worked hard. She's very organized, very administrative, but her people skills were awful. And so you'd be talking to her on the phone, and when she was finished talking, she'd just hang up. And you're going, you know, and so being able to send her to a class that's that basic, you know, kind of like please, thank you, hello, goodbye, you know, things you're supposed to have learned in kindergarten. Well, you know what? Some people don't have the opportunity to learn it, but they can learn it, and there are now programs available to teach them, again, those basic skills. And I'm sure many of you have had people working for you that were real craftsmen, but they were also totally inappropriate. And so having an environment like that where you can, are you pointing, was it him that's, I don't know.
Yeah, our organizations may want to get y'all to outsource that to
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah. But so for example, if you just tapped on Goodwill and asked them to give you candidates, they will have gone through a full spectrum of that kind of training. And who knows what other skills they already had.
Should y'all track that at all in Good Grid, and is there some place to show those skill sets and all that so employers can kind of see, you know?
Yeah, so every day we get an extract from EOMIS, which is the Electronic Offender Management Information System used in Arkansas. And so anytime they have new skills, new achievements, it gets uploaded on their resume. So when you log on to Good Grid and you see all of these resumes, you can click on them and see, did they achieve anger management? Did they take a substance abuse counseling program? Did they come out of Exodus? Did they come out of Pathway to Freedom? And you know, we deal with people that have been released. We don't really deal with people on the inside. But what we've noticed is that so many of these people are incredibly talented. They come out with carpentry, welding, plumbing, forklift, just you name it. We even had a woman who was a pastry chef. So I think you can, if you log on and you see the resumes out there, you will definitely find some candidates that are really, really good. And we've noticed that the ones that come out of programs like this with strong networks and strong mentorship usually are the best of the lot.
While you've got the mic, and so we can open up to questions here in just a second, why should employers here look at Good Grid versus a staffing agency or another avenue to find employees? How do you help the application process, and what are the benefits of using Good Grid to seek this population?
Okay. So we have a direct tie with the Arkansas Department of Community Corrections. So whether they're coming out of prison or they're coming out of a reentry facility or they're coming out of just a substance abuse counseling facility, they all have profiles on Good Grid. And one of the reasons why we ask employers to work with us and why we think, you know, we're a good choice is it's completely free. There are no contractual obligations at all. What generally happens is employers call us, they tell us what kind of candidates they're looking for, and some of them say, you know, we'd rather not have theft, or we'd rather not have forgery, and we work with those kind of restrictions. We send them 3 or 4 candidates, their resumes, their letter of explanations, and when they say that they may want to hire one of them, we schedule the interview. We also provide free assistance with work opportunity tax credits and federal bonding, so you can get those financial backings on the candidate. I mean, maybe work with them out of the goodness of your heart.
That's true. A funny story about the life skills stuff. I judged the entrepreneurship panel, and I tell you, when Scott asked me to come in and criticize these prisoners' job plans and their their business plans, and tell them, and he said, be brutally honest, they want to hear it. One, I was really impressed with the background. They'd all come from somewhere. I mean, they're guys that had, very cattle experience, they grew up doing, one guy was a personal trainer before he got in trouble. I mean, everybody had a story, and a lot of them had some pretty great experience and really had a good business plan. We nitpicked them a little bit, and they all took it in stride. And I thought, I know a lot of people on the outside that couldn't have taken the criticism, but they said, thank you, you just improved my program. I'm going to go back and make those changes and do something with that. So I was impressed not only by their background, but also by that they had learned to take criticism and to see it as a positive and were controlled. And I just thought, that was really enlightening to me. So that said, I think we've covered we covered everything, kind of intermixed a little bit. So I wanted to open up to questions, and we'll start. Scott, I think you had something you want to ask. Can we pass the mic around a little bit? How do we want to do that? I think we can all hear.
I can probably talk loud.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't need that. Thank you.
All right.
Two questions. Number one, I agree with you wholeheartedly that this is a problem, and hopefully you may have a fix for this. But Leon, I heard you say that the state is not asking whether you have a felony or not.
On the application.
On the application, I think that's foolish, and there's no way I'm not gonna ask that question. So it's interesting that you do that, but yet state entities are asking us to background check our employees to see if they have a record. So it's just passing it down to us. So that's one of the problems that we run into, especially across the state. You're going to see K through 12. Practically every school district is going to be, and they're starting to ask for background checks of all our employees, including our subcontractors and their subcontractors all the way down. That's the first issue. The other thing is that I've been very involved in K through 12 for a very long time. And one of the things that we found, especially in Pulaski County, with the kids that we're dealing with right now, the problem is not at the schools. The problem's at home. And we can do everything we can do 5 days a week, and then they go home, and then we have to come back and try to erase everything, all of the bad things they heard. Well, the same problem, these are the same kids that are in these prisons.
Yes, sir.
And so my question to you is, what are you doing with the families to change them before you release these prisoners? Because they're going to go back home. That's all they know. They have nothing. Or are you saying, no, don't go back home? I'm just curious, how are you dealing with keeping them going back into that same culture they were in when they got in?
Those are two very good questions. And let's start with the first one with the box, and then I think everybody's got answers on both those, because I've got some comment on both of those too.
Well, and just to, maybe I didn't clarify, we don't have a box on the application. However, we do background checks. And so once they've gotten past the reason for removing that question is so that they can at least get an interview. Because a lot of times when that question is on the application, employers will look at that and just discard it immediately. And so it removes that stigma. It removes that stigma initially, and it gives a person an opportunity to at least sit down and explain their side and explain why they were in prison, why they were incarcerated, why they have a felony. We still do background check. I mean, at the Department of Labor, we do a background check on everybody, whether they have a felony or not. And so, and I think all other state agencies do the same. So the background check is still there.
And let's reverse that thinking.
Yeah.
If they had it on there and they said yes, that might be one person I'd want to talk to.
Well, the problem, I think,
Because they're being honest.
and I see what he's saying, and we also have a federal issue too. And as a subcontractor we've got the majority of people are in the subcontractor level. I think I would love to see us limit those background checks, or at least be specific. You got a K through 12, you don't want certain types of offenders there. Other types of offenders, pose no hazard. There's a lot of those jobs
Well,
are,
it started that way.
yeah, no,
We know what kind of offender we're talking about.
exactly.
But now it's being expanded.
I agree. And so the same people who are sitting on one side, we want you to get these programs and get them to work, but we don't want them to work on our jobs. And so, and we have that in society too, I think. So we're having to carefully, this is why we're having this discussion. How do we carefully integrate this and do a service for society at the same time? Communicate with its goals, because it's the same problem. If you're on a dirt lot in a building, there's not many people that can get into trouble except for theft. There ought to be jobs for those folks, but if they're on a state-funded or federally funded job, I can't employ them or I can't put them on that job. I can do other things with them, but that even goes down into my ranks. And so that's something we all need to talk to our agencies and government about. Say, if you want us to help you, you got to help us help you. And so, thank you. That's a good question. Now, to the next part, there's a, I think we've talked some about soft skills. Let's talk a little bit about how you're training them to get away from their history or to not repeat those mistakes. And I'd love to hear your opinions too. And then I've got another story of somebody that told me how they're doing that a little bit, and we'll finish up with that.
One of the things here actually is the families. How are we connecting with the families on that? There's certain things that we're able to do as a program in a private employer than what the state can actually do. We're able to involve the families in that process while they're going through. I talked about those 8 criminogenic risk factors. If those aren't addressed, then we can hang it up. I think each one of our programs address those issues there. One of the things is family's a big part. Some we don't go back home because it's dysfunctional. Of course, I don't think anybody's life is not dysfunctional. We all have some dysfunction going on. So, just to be truthful. But we advise don't go back. If you go back, you're coming back to prison. I've stated that to some, and some have come back to prison. Now, that had the big head. Now, if you don't stay within that support structure, then you've got a problem. One of those criminogenic risk factors is dealing with the family, going back to those family members. And if we don't address that, then they're going to end up, and the higher you fall, if you have 8 of those, then you're going to automatically go back, the more you have. And so what we try to do is have events that's geared around inviting families in so that we can get to know them. The families know that we're involved in your loved one's life, and here's what we're doing. We have a Christmas event that we bring them in. We have events on the outside as picnics. We have visitations. There are times we go to visitation and meet with them during the time their families come through. The families make phone calls. They email us. They call and say, Johnny's, if we have a problem, call grandma, call mom, mama. He's doing bad. Guess what mama's gonna do? She's gonna scream at Johnny. Guess what Johnny's gonna do? And I've had some big guys come in my office crying because mama got on. So we try to connect them back to the family. We know that's a key part. It's critical. Because if they go to an unhealthy family, they're unhealthy, then it's going to continue the cycle of incarceration. We don't want to see that happen. But there are things that we do as a private programs that the state can't. They can actually get involved, but we can.
I'd echo that. Don't laugh. I'd echo that. We say the same thing, don't go home. I had one guy look at me and said, my parents did meth, all my family does meth, everybody I know does meth, I just figured I'd always do meth. And she'd been doing it 20 years. So, going back to that environment is just suicide. And so we talked to them about that. There's a saying in the recovery world, people, places, things. You can't go back to the same people, you can't go back to the same places, you can't go back to the same things. So you've got to make transitions. Now, sometimes that's not possible, but this is where mentoring can really come in and help. So I had a young lady with I think it was a 3-year-old son that grandma was taking care of. Well, grandma wasn't really excited about taking care of a 3-year-old son for the 2 years that she was in prison. And so she wanted the girl to come home. Day one, do not pass go, do not collect $200, come take this kid. Well, the mentor who was heavily involved with the young woman had a lot of potential, thought that's the worst thing in the world for her to do, is to go back and take responsibility for that child. She hadn't had to make 4 decisions a day for 2 years, and now she's going to be raising kids instantly. She's not going to be ready. And so she called mom. Hi, my name is, and I'm instructor of the Exodus Academy, and I'd like to visit with you about your daughter. And she struck a relationship up with the lady and finally convinced her to let her move into a transitional facility and get her feet on the ground and get her head straight. And that takes, there's got to be structure the first 90 days. There just has to be. And so she made sure that was provided for her. Long term, what we would like to see, we've been invited to all the ACC facilities in the state. There's 5. And we're building networks. We're working in West Memphis right now. But being able to engage networks of volunteers and then being able to utilize therapists and interns to do family reunification. Because, you know, a gal gets out of prison, she's lost custody of her kids, her ex-husband's remarried, they hate each other's guts. There's got to be some solutions that are being facilitated by people who know what they're doing. You know, that's not a mentor's deal. That's really getting a professional engaged. And a project that we're working on, we're going to try to do that in all the communities that we're in. Can't tell you that's happening now, but those are kind of proactive steps that we're trying to take. And as was mentioned, hey, the more pressure you put on, the better. You know, if you need things, if there are things that you need to look at, propose to the government, I hope you will. If you need to know who, Paul Chapman can tell you. Get back in the back, or we'll help you find. But there's got to be a collaboration between state government, the business community, and the faith community, working in collaboration with each other to resolve these problems. Otherwise, you can forget it. It's just not going to happen. I'll quit preaching.
Do you want to add anything to that? Alicia, do you have anything to add to that?
Just on the ban the box thing, I kind of agree with you on keeping the box. I think it's just important to keep the box and not have a fill in the blank anymore of what the charge is, but actually say, please attach your letter of explanation. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, it all comes back to employer responsibility and how bad you need people. If you need people, you dig in, you make exceptions, you figure things, you take higher risks. You don't need anybody, you get to pick and choose who's coming and going and doing that. You know, we've got several guys, but one guy had come through the programs. I was really proud of him. He was staying in Little Rock and kind of living in an area close to where he had gotten in trouble. And he came one day and said, hey, if I'm in that same neighborhood, I'm getting drugged back in. I got to do this. You know, you got another place. And we happen to have a spot in our Northwest Division, which not everybody gets to do that. But I was proud of him to say, I feel the draw. I'm getting the calls. It's coming down. And so he was well trained enough through these programs to be self-governing and say, I got to get out or I'm going back in. And I don't want to go back in. Where I've come from, I don't want to go again. I've got a shot. I'm going to do it. So I would say that's indicative of most of the people that have come through us they're risk averse to situations that get them in trouble. Once they have a good job and they see an opportunity, they see light at the end of the tunnel, they're chasing that light. They're not looking back. Their buddies call, you know, they're helping each other out. We've got 2 guys that mentor each other. As a new guy comes in, they don't, you know, we don't tell them who's who, but they talk and they'll say, hey, I heard and they bring them alongside, say, you need anything, I got you, and I'm gonna hold you accountable. If I see you messing up, I'll be the first one to pull you aside and say, I know, you know, I got you. So that's really helped us, and I think that that's indicative also of this pool of applicants that the ones who want it and have gone through the programs, and that's a level of success alone just to do that, take care of each other and pull each other up, and so they're creating some community that's been positive in our experience. I think we have time for one more question, and I think we need to wrap up to get everybody back to business. Bill?
Nisha, you mentioned the federal bonding program. Scott, that could fit exactly with the situation because that person may be a great hire for you to do certain things, but he would be excluded under your employee dishonesty. That is a bridge and resource up there to get over that hurdle. And I think it's good. I didn't know anything about that. I hate to say it, the only thing in trust is for 50 years. But that's a resource that can overcome your desire to hire somebody like that.
And I heard that on the front end. In fact, I was thinking about, 25% of us at this table have a felony. But the tax credit, is it federal or state, or both?
It's a state.
State.
And I think it's graduate. I think that if you meet other deals, it can actually grow to
Oh,
more than
yeah.
that. That's just a
If it's-
baseline deal.
If it's a disabled veteran, for instance, that's actually a $10,000 tax credit. So there are various levels.
That could pay for a little bit of training or a trial period almost. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap that up. I want to thank this panel for coming and spending some time with us today. It's very educational, so I appreciate them. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate you. Courtney, thank you very much. It's great, great discussion. On behalf of each of our organizations, we thank you and thank the panelists, all of you for taking time today and for attending today's luncheon. And for those of you in AGC, please be sure to get your reservations in for a couple of upcoming events we have. The Sporting Clays Tournament on October 12th, and more importantly, October 24th, the Night Cashin Golf Tournament. That's our major fundraiser for our scholarship fund. We need your involvement and participation in this. And that means get some teams in and get ready to play some golf. Probably the last, typically it's the last opportunity to get a good round in. So please mark your calendar for those upcoming dates. The AGC board will have a meeting immediately following the luncheon here in this room. If everyone could kindly make your way in the hallway, the mingle will be adjourned. And again, I thank you all for coming today and appreciate your involvement.